want? 75, 70?
The supermarket in Roebourne, 16 hours north of Perth, looks and sounds like any other. Except it's not. All the products, including fresh fruit and vegetables, have been donated, delivered every day from Karratha, 30 kilometres away, in a program organised by the not-for-profit organisation Foundation Food. Project leader Abby Phyllis explains.
So there's items from Coles and Woolworths that make their way to us every day, which is fruit and veg, bread, items close to their expiry. Those items can't be on sold, but they can still be picked up by members as they come through and do their regular grocery shop.
So far this year, more than 20 tonnes of groceries have made their way to the Irumuguru store Maya, which serves Roeburne's predominantly Aboriginal community.
We've coined the term shopping without shame. No one has to demonstrate their need to walk in the door at Foundation Food. We've got a membership base. It's free to become a member. Once you are, you get certain benefits and free items in store, as well as very affordable food and other general merchandise.
Roeburne resident Allery Sandy says before the shop opened, the town hadn't had a general store for 2 years.
We were excited, especially the ladies here. We said, hooray, our shop is open and we can just go to and fro into the shop. When we feel hungry, we just wander in and grab something and come back. And even our kids, it's been really good having a shop nearby. What I want for lunch today, I can just gather up the ingredients and bring it all back here and just cook it and have a meal instead of having a takeaway all the time.
Yinjabandi elder Kevin Guinness is one of the organisers of the program and says it's also creating jobs.
We employ local people there, and I think we got 2 started. I think we got our elder Rosie as well, helping out. We'd like to see it growing, and more people working. Encourage the young people to work as a starting point.
Abby Phyllis believes the store has brought other benefits.
Absolutely, quality of life is improved by the existence of Foundation Food. It's not just having access to the food, but it's that every small town has a general store, and it's a hub for the community. And it's a place for people to be employed. You come and you get your groceries, you grab a coffee next door and you sit down with your family and have a catch up, have a yarn.
She's hoping Roeburne's success might encourage more social supermarkets to be set up in other remote parts of the country. Nalama woman Kerry Churnside is greeting the spirits of her ancestors and elders, many of which died at a leprosarium, a hospital designed to treat and segregate people with leprosy from mainstream society. The leprosarium in the remote Pilbara town of Cossack is part of Miss Churnside's family story.
And old Uncle Douglas, he had leprosy, and his hands were all funny and, feet as well. He had a lot of white spots on his body, and I asked my mum, what's wrong with him? And my mum explained to me what happened to him, he had an illness.
During this time, arresting and exiling was part of Australian law. Under the 1905 Aborigines Act, Indigenous Australians could be forcibly removed from their lands and sent to leprosariums and lock hospitals. Miss Churnside's mother did her best to intervene and take care of Uncle Tulaglass at home.
She saved him, and she went to the hospital and had a meeting with the people there, with the health department, and said, no, I'm going to take him home and keep him there with me, because if you send him away, I might not see him again. So he stayed with us.
But most people like Tulaglass were medically incarcerated and taken to a leprosarium, like the one located at the town of Cossack, which ran from 1910 to 1931.
So the building that we're standing at today is the hospital ward itself, where they would have treated the patients.
Archaeologist Dr. Jade Pervin has been studying lock hospitals and leprosariums for decades.
It is the police and the pastoralists that were diagnosing the Aboriginal people as having disease, and what we know from historical records and archaeological evidence is a lot of people probably didn't have the diseases for which they were incarcerated for, which means there's probably an underlying agenda or scheme as to why these medical incarceration places were set up in the first place.
Dr. Pervin says the leprosarium had a sinister reputation for harsh treatment and discrimination. Hundreds of Indigenous people were taken away from their families with no means of communicating with loved ones. During their incarceration at Cossack, Indigenous people slept on the ground, while Europeans had sleeping quarters and beds. In planning documents, there is a nurses' quarters and sleeping wards for non-Indigenous patients, but no evidence of a structure to house Indigenous patients.
As far as we understand from the historical records, European patients were allowed to stay in the hospital wards themselves, whereas Aboriginal patients were forced to make their own makeshift humpies and huts across the island, and Aboriginal people weren't afforded as much opportunities and as much free roaming across the island as what the European patients were.
People remained on the island until they were deemed cured, but even after leaving the leprosarium, they were labelled lepers for life.
Leprosy, as well as many of the sexually transmitted diseases, had a huge stigma around them. People that were labelled with leprosy were not allowed to be part of the community, and as a result of that, some of those people were treated very poorly by society.
Despite the harrowing history, Kerry Churnside is grateful it's coming to light.
Truth telling is very important because you got to hear the two sides of the stories. If somebody put something up there and to talk about the area and what happened, they need to tell the other side of the story, like the dark side of the story that needs to come out in the open to show the real truth in what happened in some of these areas here in the Pilbara region.
We're in the Pilbara region of Western Australia, renowned for its mining and resources industry. It's estimated WA will require at least 11,000 more workers to join the industry in the next 5 years. That's according to data from the Australian Resources and Energy Employers Association. They say creative solutions are needed to find more skilled staff. Just like qualified boilermaker and diver Vitaly Bozarov, who moved to Australia with his wife and daughter after being displaced by the war in Ukraine. Despite having decades of experience, he is struggling to find work. Here's Mr. Bazarov talking via an interpreter.
Australia is a beautiful country with great services, but I need to find a good job to pay for those services.
They've turned to social media to find friends and a job.
And in these Facebook groups, people offer free services. They're like free English lessons organised online or in person.
During that time, they met Port Hedland engineer Svetlana Hakener, who helps migrants find work by volunteering her time to help write their CVs.
So the range of people who are coming here is just mind-boggling. Nurses, doctors, teachers, hairdressers, welders, fitters, engineers, all sorts.
He says language is a barrier.
It's been hard finding a job. I worked on bulk carriers and as a welder for over 20 years, but no one wants to take me on.
I can see that Vitaly is extremely marketable, especially in ports, like Port Hedland and any other ports, and he just needs to be given a chance.
A spokesperson for the Community Legal Service in Port Hedland says overseas qualifications are not always recognised in Australia.
And so Ukrainian certifications, people might have great skills. I've helped with CVs to some people who have worked on incredible type of equipment, who have been serving on these big bulker carriers for years and years and have serviced all sorts of equipment on those big ships. But the certification is not recognized in Australia.
For now, Mr. Bazarov says he will keep looking for work.
We just need a chance. Once we find somebody who knows the industry and recognises my skills, I'm sure they would want to take me on. I'd be a great asset to any company.
Terry Bloxham moved to Wongan Hills in Western Australia's wheat belt 4 years ago. He was attracted to the amenities and infrastructure on offer in the small regional town.
I'm a pensioner. It's one of the reasons I came here, because of the services that were in town. Hospitals, banking, post offices, a shop.
It's a different story now. The only bank in town is shutting up shop. It's one of the latest Westpac branches to announce it's closing, bringing the number of nationwide closures to 225. Mr. Bloxham says it's a major blow to Wongan Hills.
There's a lot of aged people in town. It's not what you call a very young town, is it? The ATMs, you can check your balance. You don't get statements from a lot of banks now. They've gone all digital. I'm not computer literate, so I can't pull up the account on the computer. So I come down here, put the card in, bang, bang, yeah, you're broke today or you've got some money.
Like many people across regional WA, driving hundreds of kilometres to access something as simple as financial advice is a confronting reality.
The cost of fuel, you're looking at about probably $100 in diesel to get down there and back. That's a big whack out of your pension.
Some 1,300 kilometres north of Wangan Hills, the same situation is unfolding in the Pilbara town of Tom Price, located in the Shire of Ashburton.
A lot of the questions that have been asked to the community and have come back to me through the council is particularly community groups. How do community groups have access?
Shire CEO Ken Donahoe found out that his one and only Westpac branch was closing through the local news. Even now, he still has not heard anything from Westpac directly. He says he is appalled by the bank's lack of customer service, both as a community member and client.
The Shire of Ashburton actually banks with Westpac, and our budget's in excess of $100 million, and nobody even rang the local government to advise us that they were closing the office in Tom Price.
John Hanlon runs an automotive business and has lived in the town since the 1990s. He believes it's reasonable to close a failing business, but he says the bank's poor communication is particularly disappointing.
If it's going to close, in 2023, what is it now? You might as well say it's, halfway through the 9th month. You might as well say we've been given, 10 or 12 weeks notice at best. But at the end of the day, they just really need to be talking to their clients, a little bit more transparently. And, I think that's going to have a fairly big effect on, their client base in inland Pilbara.
He is now reassessing who will manage his finances moving forward. Westpac is also set to close its premises in Bridgetown and Collie in the state's southwest by February 2023. In a statement, Westpac says any decision to close a branch is a difficult one.
We continue to support our customers by expanding access via bank at post, telephone, mobile and virtual banking. We take steps to ensure customers are notified in advance about the changes and are directly connected with the services they need to continue to do their banking. For those who are new to digital banking or may require more assistance with the changes, we provide dedicated support and education to make the transition easier.
It's cold comfort for Terry Bloxham.
All country towns, they're all dying, It's you move from one to another and bang, bang, bang. I don't know what's happening with these corporations. Look at the money going down the road here. That's about the 6th road train we've seen go through with all this record from last year. This year's going to be another massive record. That's all going into the banks. Where does the money that comes back to this town go?